Sahana vavatu Sahanau bhunaktu Saha viryam karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma vidvishavahai Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Verses 21 till the end. Bahyasparsheshvasaktatma Vindatyatmani yat sukham Sabhrahma yoga yuktatma Sukhamakshayamashnute Yehi samsparshaja bhogaha Dukhayonaya evate Adhyantavantah kaunteya Nateshu ramate buddhaha Shaknoti haivaya sodhum Praksharira vimokshanat Kamakrodhodbhavam vegam Sayukta sasukhi naraha Yonta sukhontara Tathantarjyotirevayaha Sayogi brahmanirvanam Brahma bhutodhigacchati Labhante brahmanirvanam Rishaya kshina kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhayatatmanaha Sarvabhutahite rataha Kamakrodhaviyuktanam Yatinam yatachetasam Abhito brahmanirvanam Vartate viditatmanam Sparshan krutva bahirbahyan Chakshuschaivantare bhuvoho Pranapanau samau krutva Nasabhyantaracharinav Yetendriyamano buddhihi Munirmokshaparayanah Vigatechhabhayakrodhaha Yah sadayuk muktayeva saha Bhoktaram yajñatapasam Sarvalokamaheshwaram Suhrudam sarvabhutanam Jnatva mam shanti mruchati. Hari Om and Namaskaram to everyone. The last 2 weeks, I think we have been discussing, last 2 classes, in fact, we've been discussing on the 22nd verse, where he said the enjoyments that are born of contacts are only wounds of sorrow or pain. They have a beginning and an end. The wise do not rejoice in them. Now, one important point wanted to highlight it. That's the reason I'm revisiting this verse. We haven't had a chance to clarify that. When he says that the enjoyments born of contacts are wombs of sorrow, we said that it starts with pleasure and slowly you lose the charm, you lose the joy, you lose the pleasure, and you come to a state where it becomes pain or sorrow. So it's a gradual transformation of what gives you joy becomes a source of sorrow and misery. That's what it means, wombs of sorrow, isn't it? So any pleasure you derive from the sense contact, the false happiness, we said, is like poison in the beginning. Sorry, it's nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. It's not of the true nature. On the contrary, anything that gives you, anything that is detestable, anything that you have to apply a certain restraint or self-control or withdraw yourself from the world causes a little bit of pain. It causes a certain amount of discomfort. It is poison in the beginning, but it ends up as nectar in the end. Okay, now how does the pleasure, what starts with pleasure, how does it end up as sorrow? Question one. Second, is it not possible that you can get a same pleasure throughout your contact with that object? So when you answer these two questions, you'll understand what is the concept we are discussing, which I want to highlight. Every one of us, I'm including myself, every one of us are subjecting ourselves, unknowingly subjecting ourselves into a stage or a phase of gradual loss or losing the pleasure because of our wrong contact with the sense object. We gradually seem to lose the joy because of our wrong relationship with it. And what is the wrong relationship is you establish an indiscriminate, unhealthy, or reckless contact with the sense object. An indiscriminate, unhealthy, reckless contact with the sense object. And the moment you say unhealthy, reckless, and indiscriminate, it all falls under the realm of your own mind. So when you contact the senses, as a sense objects rather, and when it's your mind that is driving that sense contact, invariably it is the mind. If you go back to the example of the chariot, it is the horses are running helter-skelter. So the senses are running helter-skelter. And when will the horses run helter-skelter? When the charioteer has no control over the horses. He's not able to pull back the reins, or has no control over the horses. The horses go helter-skelter. So when your intellect doesn't have the strength to command any exercise of control over the senses, or your mind and the senses, then your senses will go recklessly into the world, satisfying their whatever the sense objects can give you. In fact, in the Dhyana shlokas, there's a verse, isn't it? When you praise Lord Krishna, what is the verse, Rajima? You have the reference?
I don't remember it offhand, Guruji.
Anyone who remembers this, the verse? What is the verse which tells in the Dhyana slokas? Where do we have the Dhyana slokas? With any one of you have Dhyana slokas? Where he says, Hariji, which is the verse in the Dhyana slokas where we praise Lord Krishna? All of us have got starting problem. Start, then we can't stop. It is the first few verses, maybe the third or the fourth verse. You don't have the text with me. Subramanian Garu.
Hari Om Guruji, I have the text, but then it starts with Parthaya Pratibodhitham. From there it starts. So which is the one, not able to pinpoint the one that you referred. It starts with Parthaya Pratibodhitham Bhagavat Narayana Swayam Vyasena Karitam Puranam. It goes like that.
Madhye Mahabharatam.
Bharatam Advaitamrita Varshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam
Anusandadhami Bhagavati Bhagavad Gita
Bhavadveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravindayata Patra Netra Yenatvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipaha.
Next, what is the next one?
Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vaitraika Panaye.
This is the verse.
Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gitam Duhe Namaha.
How does it start?
Prapanna Parijata.
So, in that verse, he says, Lord Krishna is holding a staff in one hand and the Jnana Mudra in the other. Isn't it? Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gita Duhe Namaha.
Yes.
Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dogdham Gitamrudam Maha. Now, wonderful. Thanks, Subramaniamji. So, the fourth verse of the Dhyana Shlokas, the context which I wanted to draw attention is Lord Krishna, he holds a staff in one hand and the Jnana Mudra in the other. So, the choice the Lord is giving us, whether you choose the path of the staff as a cowherd boy, he used to take the cattle to graze, letting cattle loose to graze, which is symbolizing you let your senses go and eat the world as much as you want. And what do the cattle do? After they eat all what they want, at the end of the day, they sit quietly and they chew the cud. The cud chewing that they do. Exactly the same way you live a life of indulgence, and then end of the day or after your experiences, you come and mentally relive those experiences. So whether you want to choose the path of the indulgent, the pleasant, or you want to choose the path of the Jnana Mudra, which is symbolizing the union of the ego with the self. As long as the ego is separated, it is not unified with the thumb, the self, you find the world is a great challenge to you. You find yourself in great conflict with the world. But the moment the union of the ego with the self, which is the Jnana Mudra. So there's a symbolic representation there, which I just want to draw. So when one loses himself in letting his senses run wild and establish an indiscriminate contact with the senses, you are subjecting yourself to the law of diminishing value. So the law of diminishing value states, what does the law of diminishing value state? Anybody has an idea? Yes, Rajima? The law of diminishing value.
The first motichur laddu has the greatest value, and as it goes adding on, the value just diminishes and you say no more of this.
Is it because you've had too many? So it is not at that moment. Jayama is saying marginal utility. What is that? Yes, Harishji?
Guruji, it's the law of diminishing returns, or as Jayama said, the law of diminishing marginal utility.
Right.
Because that as you employ more and more, you, like in the example of supply and demand, when you increase production, when you keep increasing production, then after a certain stage, the effort that you put in is not commensurate with any return that you get. So the returns or the gain keeps diminishing. So if you were to just plot the gain, it's a diminishing.
It's a diminishing gain. So, yes, please
So
go ahead.
it really plateaus out. That's
It
what
plateaus
means.
out. Yes. Now, what is interesting is to realize that all our experiences, we have reached a state of diminishing value. All our experiences, there is no joy or happiness you derive from the sense contact.
In English, there's a beautiful saying, Guruji. I mean, not saying, it's a phraseology that as you go on, you run faster and faster to stay in the same place. So it really, the desire overtakes you and you keep, even sustenance makes you strive harder and harder. It's not just that you get any return, but you also spend a lot of your energy to stay where you are.
Yeah. Now, if you can make sense of what is said and try to draw a connection with establishing a sense contact. I'm just going back again to the verse where he calls it as wombs of sorrow. What starts with pleasure, he says, ends up as sorrow. All of them have a beginning and an end. Now, why does it have an end? A precipitous fall where you get a certain amount of joy. Let's say you get 10 units of joy when you have established the first contact, and by the time you reach the 10th contact, there is 0 units of joy or happiness you get from that relationship, from contact. As somebody said, you get saturated. You don't find that same contact any more pleasurable. Do you find the same thing applicable even in relationship with people? The sheer proximity with people, you find you get, what happens? Familiarity breeds contempt. You feel sick and tired of the same person. So the law of diminishing value leads you to another law, which is known as a law of neutralization. So these two laws are interconnected, intertwined, the law of diminishing value and the law of neutralization. So when you get neutralized to something, it doesn't give you any more joy. It doesn't give you any more happiness. But what has happened? So point one, you lose the joy. Second, you have increased the desire for the sense object, which is you have become more dependent on the sense object for your joy, and you don't get any more joy from the same contact. Are you all following? The first step, you keep contacting it indiscriminately, you lose the joy, there is no more pleasure. Secondly, since you have led an indulgent life, the desire also becomes stronger. You want more, you have a craving for it. You may have the object, but there is no joy in it. And thirdly, what Hariji says beautifully, so the third stage is the absence of it gives you complete displeasure. I don't know of any greater hell than this. So to sum it up, with it, there is no pleasure. Without it, there is displeasure. So you can't be happy with it and you're miserable without it. You do not know the joy and beauty of what life can give you. You're not able to enjoy what that simple sense contact can give you. You're not able to eke the most out of that contact. Why? Because of indulgence, because of indiscriminate contact. So if you do something repeatedly, more often, very often you keep repeating it, you lose the charm, you lose the joy. So if you do it, so what is the way you can bring back the joy or happiness in that contact? The only way you can bring back the happiness is try to establish an abstinence period between two contacts. Create a level where you're abstaining from the contact. So therefore, it is not wrong. In fact, I'm concluding very quickly because we have spent enough time on this verse. But the concept you must understand, what you got to conclude is sense objects, sense contact, there is no pleasure. Abstinence is all pleasure. The conclusion is sense contact, there is no pleasure. Abstinence, there is full pleasure. All pleasure is in abstinence. May sound contradictory, but this is the truth. Yes, Tinkima?
So, okay, abstinence agreed between two contacts and there is pleasure. But if your mind is continuously thinking about it, what's the use? Isn't it better, whatever it is, whether it's like going out to see something or to buy something or to eat something or to meet someone, it's over and done with. Then you maintain. But if you keep on, if there is continuous abstinence and the mind may keep going back to it, because it knows the pleasure it has experienced and may want to re-experience the pleasure of whatever, the laddu or whatever it is.
Now, you see, what you're talking about is a category where you're physically abstaining and mentally indulging. A person of that nature, in the third chapter, he calls him as a mithyachara. He calls him a hypocrite. We are not talking of hypocrites here, but we are talking about actual abstinence. When you withdraw your physical senses and also the mind from the sense objects.
Both physical and mental, you're away from.
Correct. You're both
so
physical and mental. Because if you read, sorry, Ma, if you read the verse, he says, the wise do not rejoice in them.
Do
There's a
not think
cue.
about it. Well.
There's a cue from the verse itself, which says the wise are not interested in the essential transactions. That doesn't mean they don't contact the world. They are, but they are not reveling or rejoicing in them. Whereas, where is attention? They have switched off from the lower and they are engaged on
To the
something
higher.
higher.
Okay.
They've
So
moved
it's
on.
both a mental and physical abstinence.
Yes, it has to be mental and physical.
Thank you, Guruji.
Yes, ma. Yes, ma. Most welcome. So again, I'm repeating. Since the moment you get into contact, you lose your joy content. The moment you abstain from the very same contact, there is you're creating the potential of happiness. Therefore, it is fair to say sense contact is sorrow, abstinence is joy. No wonder these great men just cut off from the world and they were in aloof. They were in the woods. Why? Because they were reveling in peace and bliss all within themselves. They didn't want to contact. They didn't want to come down to the plains to deal with the world. They were in a sanctuary within themselves. We got to conceive that. Yeah, Sitaramji, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
Namaste, Guruji.
Yes, sir.
One of the sayings in Mathura is about this contact gives you pain and absence gives you pleasure. The saying is that ये मथुरा के लड्डू ऐसे हैं जो खाए वो भी पछता है, जो नहीं खाए वो भी पछता है. Because the size is very large, so if we eat all of it, you get the stomach ache, and if you don't eat it, then you have always the desire.
Longing.
Okay, but on a serious note, Guruji, the other day I was sharing with somebody close to me about, you mentioned in the last class that you were in Malaysia and you did not visit too many places of things, though it's a beautiful country, I mean, beautiful location in the world. So her argument was that, look, I would like to see many places in this world. I know I can't see all of them, but certainly I would like to go to a place, look at it, enjoy it, come back, and there'll be more desires to see more places. Yes, I know I can't do all of it, but still, I don't want to be in a situation where I have no desire to see anything. I think she says this kind of desireless state is not acceptable. It's better to have desires which are unfulfilled rather than have no desires at all. As Ram in his message just mentioned, Ram Kondinya, saying that, that is it not better to have limited engagement with the world rather than total abstinence? The similar note is what her thing was. And I think most of us fall into that category where, we would say, okay, I know we can't do everything. So all these, Gita part is teaching us, okay, abstinence is required. So we want to limit our desires, so we can't fully reduce the desires because we feel, how do I spend my time the whole day if I don't have any desires or to work with? I thought I'd share this with you. If you can throw some more light on this. Of course, it's the same topic, but maybe we'd like to move on.
Yeah. Now, I understand where she's coming from, but see, whenever we talk of a desire, we always, in fact, the next verse is going to talk about the moment your desires go out of control, it's going to, what is seemingly a joy or a pleasure which takes you from experience to experience. You fall a prey to it, then you had it. You never can justify any desire as right or wrong because you never know which desire you can control, which Sidney Harris says all this wisdom you have boils down to the capacity to know which impulses to obey, which impulses must be made to obey. If you have clarity or wisdom, is which one I will obey, which one must be made to obey. As long as you have control and you drive yourself into a particular experience, giving the guarantee that I have complete control and mastery, that I will not fall a prey to the external demands or the internal cravings, there is no problem. You can go and experience the world. Tell your friend to go and experience the world as long as you are the master. It's not that the external world drives you. There's no problem. The Shastras are saying you that not to. But all what they are saying is desire is an impediment between you and your larger purpose, a greater purpose. Always it is a selfish element in it. So it's, you could get trapped in it and you don't know that you're trapped in it. So if someone thinks my entire life is just driven to satisfy my desires, at some point that same person will realize that it is an unending process, it's an unending chase. There is no sense of satisfaction in trying to satisfy your own unending selfish demands and desires. It's not a life of satisfaction, and one's own experience teaches you that. But if one wants to lead that, you can't help that person think wisely. You can't rationalize with the person. Yes, Ramji, you're rightly saying that desire is the root cause of all suffering. The whole, throughout the scriptures, throughout the Shastras, this is what it is. It's not wrong to have a desire, but the moment you fall a victim to the desire, that's a problem. So we'll see that. In fact, the very next verse, very soon we'll get into it. So how to avoid getting into the trap where you fall a prey into the law of diminishing value? We said 3 points. The law of diminishing value is, first is you start losing the joy of sense contact. Second, you have increased your desire. Third, what is the third thing we said? With it, there is no pleasure. Without it, there is complete displeasure. And we have got ourselves neutralized to not only with sense enjoyments, we have got neutralized in our life to everything that we are doing. We are picking up sense objects and we are getting neutralized to them. We get into a relationship, I'm neutralized to that person. So you don't find any joy in the normalcy of life. And perhaps this is one of the reasons, if you reason why certain communities or certain people, I'm not against it, why they go overboard in trying to do something out of the ordinary just to get that same kick or fun or their excitement. Example, people go about tattooing themselves. I've mentioned this before. People tattoo themselves or pierce themselves all over their bodies, or they go and play extreme sport, or they have to do something out of the ordinary just to find that little spice, a little extra in their lives. Why do people have to do all that? Or you find that you need to travel, you want to travel. If not, you find there's something amiss in your life, isn't it? There's something, a void, something is amiss, an incompleteness within. Why? Is because you have got neutralized to your life. You are tired of eating the same home food every day. So you want to go to a restaurant, you want to go to a hotel and have a meal. But especially, let's say you have been traveling continuously for 2 weeks and every meal is a hotel food. You just want to come home and eat your simple dal, curry, nothing else. You just want that tair sadam. You just want that curd rice and nothing more. Why? You got neutralized to. There's no more joy in that widespread. The first day you see a wide spread of buffet and you just get excited. I can eat everything. I want to enjoy this. Fifth day you're tired. Same old this, same old starter, same old dessert. I don't want it, man. I'm tired. It's not that your desire is exhausted. The desire is very much lurking. So there are two schools of thought which tells that one way of exhausting the desire is through to go all out and give in to the desire, satisfy all what you can, and then you will exhaust it. And this thought was propounded by the very great, powerful thinker, very famous Rajneesh. Rajneesh was known for this. And one of the things, Rajneesh became famous for, Rajneesh had 108 Rolls Royce. One of the things. He became very famous. He drew everybody's attention. To have one Rolls Royce is a big thing. He had 108 of them. So his principle was go all out. You have a desire for something, don't control it. Go all out, give in to it, experience it, satisfy it, get rid of it. Another school of thought is complete abstinence. You abstain from that, you get rid of it. But then there's this danger. What Tinkima said, that you could be physically abstaining but mentally indulging. So the question is, how does one get rid of a desire? This is a question you can come back to me with answers next week, because I want to seriously move out of this verse. If I were to deliberate on this again, it will consume a little more time. But I want you all to think about it in the context of indulgence and complete abstinence. How does one get rid of a desire? You can say sublimation is another word, Hariji, But the question is, how does one get rid of a desire? Raghuramji is asking, without desire, there is no achievement. No. See, you must understand, desire always has a negative connotation, means it's a selfish connotation. So how does one, but you can convert the desire into an aim or an ambition. That's nothing wrong. I don't want to discuss further on that, but then we might give you some points, but please think on it. How does one get rid of one's desires? All right. Okay. Now, what is this, Sitaramji? It should be clarified what you said. He says,
I mean, to the extent of what you just mentioned, that one school of thought is that to overcome a desire or temptation is to fully indulge in it. You mentioned about Rajneesh saying that 100 Rolls Royce. So Oscar Wilde, in his beautiful way, says, he's very terrific in satire, says, the best way to avoid a temptation is to succumb to it fully. Exactly the same thing. So
if that be true, then what Ravana did was perfectly right.
According to Oscar Wilde, in a lighter vein, yes.
But
he didn't succeed.
I don't think he's in lighter vein. I think he's very serious with his opinion.
Yeah, no.
There are people who hold on to this school of thought. Many people say that. And in fact they justify, what is the world? World is meant to enjoy only, isn't it? So why should I hold back? I should go all out and enjoy.
Actually, he did not mean it so seriously, because he wrote another masterpiece called The Picture of Dorian Gray, and in which he's a Don Juan, full of pleasures and all that, very handsome and all that, and somebody paints a picture of him, which is extremely beautiful. I mean, a replica of it, and he gets a sort of a power. So he indulges in all that he wants to do, but he doesn't age one bit, but the picture starts showing the effect of his indulgence. So after a few years or so of indulging in all his sensual pleasures, he's young as ever, but the picture he goes and sees, which he had kept in a closet, not wanting to see, shows all the wrinkles and the effects of his, let's say, feasting and libertine living. It shows clearly, and he says, it's really what, that if you succumb to your temptations, this is exactly what happens.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that. In fact, Umar Khayyam puts it very beautifully, very famous quote. He says, here with a loaf of bread beneath the bough, here with a loaf of bread beneath the bough, a flask of wine, a book of verse, and thou besides me singing in the wilderness. And this wilderness is a paradise. I repeat, Umar Khayyam, please search for this and try to make sense of it. I want you all to put some effort to figure it out. Here, with a loaf of bread beneath the bough, a flask of wine, a book of verse, and thou besides me singing in the wilderness. And this wilderness is paradise. So he's talking of an experience where he is in company with someone, with food and wine, a book of verse, intellectual pleasures, emotional pleasures, physical pleasures. But then he says, it's all in the wilderness, and that wilderness is paradise. Very interesting. Very poetically he puts it. I want to leave that incomplete. Question mark, figure it out. If you still want a clarification, we'll come back to it. Okay? We'll take up 23. Shaknoti haiva yah sodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha. Shaknoti haiva yah sodhum praksharira vimokshanat kama krodhodbhavam vegam sayukta sasukhi naraha. Sayukta sasukhi naraha. He is a yogi, he is a happy man. Who is a yogi? Who is a happy man? One who is able to withstand even here, before liberation from the body, the force arising from desire and anger. That's all. Kama krodhodbhavam vegam. Vegam is the force, is the, we'll have to clarify that what that word vegam means. So he who is able to withstand even here means this moment, right now, in your own experiences, in your current situation, before liberation from the body, means before you die, if you are able to conquer it, means he is suggesting that you can attain salvation, you can attain moksha if you have conquered your own desire and anger. Which we have said, man minus desires equals God. If you are able to get hold of your own desire, so the biggest spiritual impediment between you and Godhood is your own desires and the emotions that arise out of your desires. There's nothing more than that. So he who is able to withstand even here, before liberation from the body, the force arising here, this within this lifespan, you have got this wonderful opportunity to make the most of it. So you can either choose to indulge in them, or you can either choose to overpower them. You can either overpower them or you fall a victim of them. The choice is yours. The force arising from desire and anger. What does the word vegam means? The force. Vegam, Ramji is saying the pressure, the force, the strong current. Perfect. it's not, Rajima, it's not a mere impulse. So he's saying there is a desire and then there is a force in the desire. So he's trying to separate an innocuous desire to the force or the momentum or a strong current. So one is to have the desire. So you can have a desire and yet not have the vegam. You can have a desire and then you can fall a prey into the vegam. The speed, literal word is speed, Sitaramji is saying, but what is that vegam? What is that force? It is a sort of the uncontrollable nature in the desire. It is the vehement demand, the sheer push, the urge, the thirst, the momentum, that excitement, the intenseness. It is the flood. It's like the floods opening of a dam. It just gushes out. It is that rush or that push or that excitement or that anxiety. It is that craving. In fact, it is the desiring in the desire. So every desire has this uncontrollable nature which is known as the desiring, which he calls as the vegam. Now the very same concept is beautifully brought out in the Bhajagovindam. In the second verse, he says, Muda jahihi dhanagama trishna. The word trishna is exactly the word thirst here. So here it's the word is vegam, the force. There it's a thirst, the trishna. It means the thirst. He says, "O fool, give up the thirst for aggrandizing wealth," he says. He doesn't say, do not acquire. You can acquire, but you should not acquire with a thirst, with a greed, with an obsession. You know, how people behave when they see a sale. You don't have to be someone deprived of comforts and conveniences. You could have had all the comforts and conveniences. You have everything with you, and yet Black Friday sale, huh? All over the world there is Christmas sale or New Year sale or Black Friday sale. Huh? What is the Rajima? She seems to know a lot about it.
Guruji, it's called the Boxing Day sale in the Western countries.
Why they literally end up boxing, is it? So literally they camp before the store right from the previous evening or even the early morning. They start camping up so that they are first in line. It's all first come first serve basis. And the way they go and just get hold of it as if they've never seen, as if they've never experienced, they've been deprived, poor people, you know. And here we're talking of people who have seen materiality and sensuality. They have seen it all. They have lived, they have seen it. And yet that rush, you can't contain that vegam, that force arising out of, it's not a seemingly innocuous desire. It is you go to any length to satisfy that desire. And this is the desiring in the desire. You can go to any length to satisfy it. Ravana went to any length just to satisfy his fancy for Sita. He went to great length. And thereafter he justified every act to satisfy the desire. That's the problem. A simple example is the banks of the river and the river. If the river is the desire, the banks of the river is the intellect, the principles, the value systems, the conscience that contains the desires. Just because you have a desire, you would not resort to any extreme measure, any unethical ways and means just to satisfy it, isn't it? That is akin to the river breaking the banks and then inundates the fields and homes and destroys livelihood, and everything is destroyed. Nothing is left, nothing is spared. And that is what one desire can cause. In fact, I compare it to a passing breeze. What is the difference between an evening passing breeze? You go out into the balcony or take a walk in the park and you see the beautiful breeze. Your hair is flying, your shirt is flying all over, your kurta is flying all over. You feel so nice, refreshing. What is the difference between an evening breeze and a hurricane? Sudhakar Garu, what is the difference between an evening breeze and a hurricane, sir?
The evening breeze gives you the pleasure and you can enjoy it.
Right.
Whereas the hurricane, it takes to the doom.
Chapter close. Correct. But do you agree that it doesn't take much for the passing breeze to become a hurricane?
It all depends on our mind, how to take it.
No, I'm talking through the example, with the example. The passing breeze is, let's say the breeze is blowing at a speed of, I don't know, 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers hour speed is it's a pleasant breeze. Okay, 20 kilometers hour, whatever, average. But the same thing gathers momentum. It's 200 kilometers an hour. It can uproot trees, it can destroy. Everything is flying all over.
Yeah.
My point I'm saying is it doesn't take much for the 20 to become 200.
No, it doesn't take much time at all.
It doesn't take much time.
It can become a hurricane also.
Yes.
Just like driving a car, nowadays the latest cars are coming in 10 seconds or 50 seconds. We can go up to 100 kilometers or something like that.
So 10 seconds is too long, sir.
I would say, just for an example, I don't know exactly what I'm telling.
I think in single digits, they go to from 0 to 100. In a matter of 3-4 seconds, you reach.
Yes.
So it doesn't take, in fact, when you have situations like this, it demands great control,
Yes.
isn't it? Now, what they're trying to say is the desire also in you has that great potential. It can transform into it can become a volcano, it can explode. And we all have seen consequences of desire going out of control, isn't it? So here he says, anyone who is able to contain the force arising from desire and anger. Now, anger again is nothing but a modification of desire. It can be a minor annoyance. You may not agree to something of what someone says or does. And that little annoyance how long does it take for that annoyance to become an argument and short of fist fight? I don't know which movie was it. I can't recall it. There was two armies that were crossing each other and walking by in opposite directions. Two armies. They all disciplined walking. And suddenly there was shooting and fighting, and they started attacking each other. And there was a heap of dead bodies. A few fellows who were in that survived. And then the chief comes, trying to investigate and find out who started this, because it was not a battleground. Two armies were crossing by. Result of what happened was there was a heap of dead bodies. He was investigating what started. And the story goes, the one fellow, he said, I saw him starting, sir. And he goes to him and said, why did you start? What did you do? No, he just said, sir, I just bit my thumb, sir. I just said, I did, sir, he said. He looked across the other side and he said, he did. Then why you did, He said, sir, I bit my thumb, sir, but not at him, sir. The result of that, there were 100 fellows dead. You get what I'm saying? It doesn't take much to start an argument, to start a friction, to start a rage or a vega, and the result is there can be a considerable damage. I don't know which movie is it. It's a very famous play.
Bridge on the river Kwai, sir.
I don't know. I can't recall, so I can't. Doesn't strike a chord. But if you think that is, maybe I can figure it out. What did you say, sir? It's the
Bridge on the river Kwai.
Bridge on the River Kwai. Okay.
It is. It strikes a chord to me, but I don't know exactly.
You can just, if that be, I'll explore that. I'll figure that out. But
Okay.
it is just as innocuous as that. You know, many a time you get into an argument or a debate over petty things, isn't it? It's nothing serious, and you can get into a serious argument, a heated argument, and then it all starts with a desire which develops into anger. Anger mounts. Go back to the ladder of fall. Huh? Remember the ladder of fall. It all starts with thought, attachment, desire, anger. Anger mounts. You get into a delusion, loss of memory, loss of intellect, and then you don't know what you speak, you don't know what you do, you don't know what your actions are, and then it becomes completely self-destructive. So here he says, one who is able to control his desire and anger, even here, he says, Sa Sukhi Naraha. He is a happy man. He is a yogi. So simple. They don't complicate things. It's so simple and straightforward, down to earth. You say, I know this. I've heard this many a time. But yet, the question is your desire under your control?
I got a small question, Guru.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
The anger can be out of apathy, pain, and out of love also. If somebody is not able, you are not able to meet, I mean, say, up to your expectations, and you get anger, and you are trying to make him right, and that can be also an anger, no? Anger coming out of apathy and sympathy.
Because there is still an underlying expectation, isn't it?
Anger is, I mean, say, there is no vengeful spirit in that. We get anger. Suppose if our kid is doing something wrong, we love him, and out of love, we try to scold him. And that comes out of as an anger, expression of anger.
Yes.
But is it, I mean, say, not good?
It's absolutely not good. I completely understand what you're saying. And we've all had experience of it many a time. And it is the desire is nothing but a selfish relationship with the world. The desire leads to an attachment. And that desire or attachment, when it is not met, you get into an experience of anger. You may not have an hatred, but even those moments you may not want to. The feeling of love is no more there, isn't it? Sir, when two people decide that they will not live with each other, when they've decided we'll part ways, they've divorced, what could have gone prior to that? What would have happened prior to that? You think it would have been a pleasant journey thus far?
No.
It is constant bickering, bitterness, complaining, grumbling, fighting, hatred, constantly blaming the other. A point comes, and then you say, we have amicably decided we will part ways. There's nothing amicable there. You have short of breaking each other's jaw, and then you go and in the papers, amicably they've decided they'll part ways and they'll share their assets. It's not that you and your spouse went for a candlelight dinner and then you both signed an agreement and a candlelight dinner that we are divorcing each other. It's not a pleasant decision taken on a pleasant evening. No, a lot of turmoil, a lot of emotions, and all that arises because of a desire and attachment.
Yes.
Isn't it? So he's only trying to alert us of the potential what this seemingly innocuous desire can do if you don't have it under control. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. It's like a volcano, an active volcano, but it's snow cap. People are skiing on it. People don't understand it's an active volcano inside. Active volcano within all of us. We don't know when we're going to boom, react, to what we're going to react, what is going to trigger it, no idea. And that is what he's saying, that vagam or that thirst or that anger. Isn't it? Ramji, yes, sir. So I think you're conveying something, you're trying to say something. Please go ahead, sir. Yes.
Hari Om Guruji. I was only trying to say that more than anger,
Mhm.
when you're angry, what you say, because we lose control on our tongue when we are angry. That happens very easily.
Yes.
And once you say things which cannot be taken back, because that is what creates the actual culmination of that friction will happen because of that. That's what I was trying to say.
Correct. But it's again, it's only an expression of your mental state, isn't it? An unstable mind, a mind
Yeah, correct.
which is influenced by an emotion, anger, is only going to cloud your clarity of thought, and is going to only cause further damage. Nothing constructive happens thereafter, because it doesn't make sense to you if you go back and revisit it. It doesn't even make sense to you. Forget the other person, isn't it?
Correct. Exactly. Yeah.
But and then what is it you were saying a little earlier? You mentioned about.
Yeah, earlier I was saying that one of my friend's wife, she was a doctor, but in the US, that too, and she had this strong desire to reduce weight. Not that she was overweight, but she was overcome by this fancy to reduce weight and followed some regime of reducing diet and running every day, running 100. I mean, lot of time during the day. Finally, it led to anorexia, and then she died of anorexia, leaving two daughters, young daughters, and then husband. So I think it's what when you were talking about uncontrolled desire, I think those are the consequences of uncontrolled desire. This is not something which should have happened. If she was thinking rationally, this would not have happened.
But there's nothing wrong with the desire to be healthy.
Yes.
But when the desire, sorry.
Yeah. If it was a limited desire to stay healthy, then she would not have had these consequences. But she had an uncontrolled desire to not to be healthy, but to reduce weight, which was only one of the means of staying healthy. But I think so it reached what you were talking earlier, that this weight reduction program reached a situation of diminishing returns. And then finally it gave her negative returns, and then that's what happened.
Yeah, yeah. Very sad to note that. But desire, as long as it is under control, there's no problem. But the moment it goes out of control, that's when you had
Exactly.
it. So you're talking of someone, we're talking about who killed herself, not willingly, but it destroyed her because of desire to lose weight.
Yeah.
I can give you a long list of people who are killing themselves because of desire to eat.
Yeah.
Eating also, they're destroying themselves. They will say, I will
Yeah,
continue to
absolutely.
it. They will take, in fact, I remember of a lady who invited us to her palatial house for a beautiful dinner. And what struck me most was what was offered on her plate. A huge, maybe there were 15, 20 tablets in a cup, and a bowl of only boiled raw vegetable, while we were being treated with a lovely spread of food. And then she was saying, Vinay, this is my life, look at it. I can't afford to eat anything that you're having, and yet I have everything, but I can't afford to eat it.
Yes.
And she says it's because of my own indiscipline, and she attributed to herself, I've led an indulgent life. So it is not whether to desire. No, rightly said. In fact, I read an article somewhere. There is so much of desire for these young girls to to get into this, what do you call this profession? Modeling. Modeling, correct? And then there are such strict yardsticks to be of a certain weight, waist this much, height this much, etc., etc. They have such strict yardsticks. And there was an article in UK which was published, and these young girls, they take to smoking, and they smoke so heavily so that they lose appetite for food, so that they don't eat, so that they lose weight, so that they have the right shape, so that they can model. Can you imagine the connection? How they are going? So they end up becoming smokers, heavy smokers, so that they have no appetite, so that they don't eat, so that they are able to keep a physique, so that they can pursue a particular profession. Any desire can destroy you. Any desire. There's nothing safe in a desire. All you must understand. There's nothing as a good desire and a bad desire. The moment you get obsessed with a desire, it becomes destructive in nature. And you do not know what can go out of control. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Sadly, we don't have, even though we know what we lack. What is it that we lack, Ramji, since you're still on this subject?
We lack self-control.
Why is it we lack the self-control?
Because the desire actually makes you lose that sense of control, the strong desire. I think so. Those who can exercise control, I think it is a mental discipline which one has to inculcate or cultivate over a period of time. That where to stop. That discipline, if you don't inculcate, then you become subjected to these uncontrolled desires. Like you said in the beginning, you should enjoy when things are under control. Many people think that uncontrolled things are more enjoyable, which is actually wrong. When you do things under control only, you can enjoy them better.
Absolutely. But you hardly come across people who have control, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
Somewhere or other, some sense organ or other, you have a weakness for, and that becomes detrimental, and it causes a great
Downfall. Yes.
downfall. It becomes detrimental for you. And as Harishji rightly said, it is the weak the sad reality of life in every situation, every person, is that it's a weak intellect and a strong mind. So that's a battle that is lost even though it started. The intellect is weak, and that's the primary reason we are recommended to study the Shastras, not merely study, not mere information, exercise the intellect, reflect so that the intellect becomes strong. You have the tool so that you can handle your own mind. And if that tool is not there, you may know it because you have intelligence, but intellect is not there, you will not be able to exercise or implement that intelligence. You're a smart man, but you don't know what to and what not to. It doesn't translate into action. So it's not the dearth of information here. We are talking in what's lacking is the absorption of that knowledge or the values. And that is done through the process of reflection, which we so much emphasize on. So, Rajima, what is it that you said? What's that word you typed?
Guruji, it's a disease called bulimia. They become bulimic. So these models actually don't deny themselves food or whatever they want. They consume huge amounts and then they go and throw it out. Just
So
to maintain their,
infused.
it gratifies their want, but yet they are maintaining their whatever statistics.
So it is infused vomiting?
Yes.
I thought only people in the pub do.
People
in the pubs, no, they get drunk and then they go and vomit and they come back and again drink.
This is a serious psychological disorder, Guruji. Bulimia and anorexia.
Then plenty of people have it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Princess Diana suffered from it. Princess Diana, as Sitaramji said, suffered from this.
No, we should not
take names.
No, not take names. It's news to me, but to say it's a psychological disorder, it is. It's actually, when you say, what do you mean psychological disorder?
It's all in the mind, Guruji.
You mean to say you can't get over it?
Well, therapy is required, but not many of these particular professionals heed to it, Guruji. Yeah. They feel gratified. They feel they're in charge. They feel they're, in control of their own whatever. And it's very sad.
I see this drama happening in every person in different level, in different way.
Correct.
You don't have to give it a name, but it is happening in every way, in every person, some kind of addiction, some kind of weakness, some kind of overpowering. It's happening, isn't it? End of the day, our mind is not kept at bay. As simple as that. Mind is playing phenomenal tricks with us.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, Sitaramji.
Actually, can you hear me now? Yeah. Some of these psychological disorders are really something to do with the mind, which requires medication. It is not something that you can exercise self-control over. For example, if you take the case of depression, it's like somebody having cancer. You can't will it not to have cancer. Some of these diseases of the psychological of the mind are something which are not in your control and requires psychiatric treatment and medication. Only that case. This thing of bulimia, which Raji mentioned, is also of a similar nature. It requires intervention by a practicing psychiatrist.
But what I agree with you, and in fact, you are right. But it's all our own actions that is leading ourselves into that state. I'm saying I know I see people as potential who can, you've just fallen a prey to something in particular. You have a weakness for something in particular. It's just a matter of time. You carry on, you will become addicted to it. Right now, if I were to ask each one of you, there's something that you have a weakness for. Your mind craves for it. You have no control. It's addiction. It may not be towards smoking. It may not be towards drinking. It may not be towards any other indulgence, but you could have addiction towards proprietorship. You can have attachment towards your children, attachment towards materiality. It is some kind of a mental imperfection that is very, very evident. You may not accept it, but lacuna is everywhere. These people may need medical intervention, but it's all self-created. You have allowed the mind to rule ungoverned for a long period of time, and it comes to extreme situations where it needs to be medically administered or supervised. But the same mental attitude and our unhealthy mental state is reflecting, because I put on the glasses to see that. It is that vision we have. It's a philosophical perspective. If you look at it, I see that everywhere, and I see that in myself. So I am trying to say that it is the human mind, its nature. This is what the Shastras are saying. It's just that we may not be having to that, but we may have it to something else. The people addicted to television, people addicted to phone, people addicted to talking, people addicted to sleeping, eating. It could be anything. Addicted to traveling. Hariji, we will conclude with your remarks. Could you unmute yourself, sir, please? Yes, sir.
Something like an irritating habit for everybody else. But psychologically speaking, if you look at many of the psychological problems, by and large, a lot of them result from unresolved conflicts of earlier times. It's the same concept as of asana, which is not exhausted, and therefore it continues to remain and gnaw at you. And it manifests in various different ways. So what a psychologist always does, particularly an interventional psychologist, would generally tend to go down to the root causes of the let's say the unresolved conflicts or the hidden resentments, which could be from childhood, which could be from early, which has just carried on and which has not been addressed or sorted out. It's again a question of you, while you have bodily moved on, your mind is still living in the past. And you're reliving those things again and again and again and reacting to those situations. So that's what they try and do. So it's very much the same philosophical concept of living in the present rather than, chasing either future dreams or living in the past torments.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yes.
What all these psychological things come down to.
Yes, Sitaramji.
Though I agree with what Harish is saying, that in most cases of these psychological disorders, there is this unresolved conflicts during your childhood, whenever. But there is a small percentage, which unfortunately, though the percentage is small, the number of people involved in are very large, are due to genetic reasons, which you have no control over. I mean, like the depression which Deepika Padukone has gone through, or this bulimia which she mentioned about. Some of these are genetic in nature, so which can't be changed, and they surface at some time or the other, or like the bipolar. These are all genetic in nature, so you have no control. I mean, I'm just trying to make out a slight difference in the sense that everything is not in our control at some point in time. Why it is genetic for you, those others in the family may not have happened, it is something else, but the fact is some of these tend to be genetic in nature.
Now there are opposing opinions. Tingima is clarifying depression is not genetic. It's a learned behavior. Now, I am not a professional, nor do I know what depression is, because I have no experience of it. Please forgive me. So I am not qualified to talk about it. If anyone is, I know Tingima also says I am not depressed, but she says she knows what it is. Yeah, Tinkima, please. We'll have to wind it up soon, please.
No, I was just saying, see, this is not the forum to discuss whether it is or it isn't.
Yes.
So clinical depression definitely needs medication. Just like BP and sugar, you can't will it out or say, I'll eat less sugar or I'll eat less laddus or I'll run 20 miles. No.
No, please don't say less laddu. You must give us laddu.
I'll give you, I won't have.
Yeah.
But clinical depression is also, there is a chemical imbalance for which the medication is required. But sometimes depression happens because of our circumstances and our coping skills. We don't have the resources or the coping skills. And therefore, there it's like a mood disorder.
Yeah.
But generally, with support, emotional support, and with the support of people and with the passage of time, and when things resolve, a person can come out of it. And this is the work that we do at Roshni. We are doing it for the last 23 years. So I want to reiterate for those who believe depression is not genetic. Okay, it is a learned behavior. There is no conclusive proof that because the mother was depressed, therefore the daughter is depressed, because it's not carried by the gene.
All I will appeal is, please don't get depressed. Whatever
Yeah.
be the answer, agreed or not, let's not get depressed. Okay. We'll come back to it. Okay. There you go. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.